I'd like to
I
think.
guess.
All right, so I think we're live. If only you knew what I've been doing. An hour ago, I was like, oh, we got no audio. Let me see if I can fix it. Then we had no video. Then I couldn't find cables. Then they were on their way to come and join me. So, oh, there we go. Here's everyone. So, welcome everyone. We got a special guest with us today because Dan is away on a mission. So we got the incredible Jamie with us.
Thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. So excuse me as I get everything kind of sorted from just the technical issues that I've been having. And I got a little bit of feedback from last time, so I'm going to try and make sure the audio is just right. So I'll be keeping my eyes on that. So topics, a little bit disorganized again today. Stay with us, we'll get there. What are we talking about today?
So, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We hope that you're out there. We're excited to be together just so that we can kind of prepare for the year and talk about some of the things that may be affecting us as individuals, as parents, as teachers, as educators, and also affecting our students as we enter this new school year. One of the biggest topics that we are going to discuss today is anxiety and some of the trauma that exists within our population and how they're dealing with things as we enter the school year, or how they're going to need help in coping with those things.
Yeah, I think the main concept is looking at it from as schools open up and students are back in person, and parents are sending their kids maybe for the first time in a year and a half. Students may be going back for the first time in a year and a half. Teachers may be going back for the first time in a year and a half, or even if they've been back, it's just the new year, the typical things you might be feeling as you start a new year of school as a teacher, as a child, or as a parent sending your child to school, plus the pandemic, the ongoing issues there, plus any additional issues that may be facing there. So it is a different year because even last year there was uncertainty, but then there was the idea of virtual options. This is in person now, so really we have to see where things are going to go. Some states have already opened up their schools and they're kind of testing the waters. We will be opening up soon in New Jersey as well. So just trying to talk about it from all the angles.
Now, I guess before we even get into that, I want to make sure that Jamie has the opportunity to introduce herself and let you know a little bit of her background so that when we talk about these big topics that you're able to understand where she's coming from.
Sure. So my background is actually in clinical mental health. I was an outpatient therapist and in-home therapist. For those who don't know, families do have opportunities across the country, but here in New Jersey, under a certain system of care where you can actually have in-home therapeutic providers in your home. So I was an outpatient mental health clinician and in-home mental health clinician for a good number of years, and then this amazing opportunity to transition into a school setting, which is something I always truly dreamed about, because I always felt like in working in outpatient therapy and working in in-home therapy, I getting to know children, getting to know their families, I always felt like there were these missed opportunities, and a lot of those missed opportunities were happening in schools. Now, not to say that schools weren't doing the very best that they should be doing. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is that children and teenagers are in school for how many hours a day? 8 to 12, right? If they're there early, if they're there after school, if they're athletes, if they're in clubs, they're there for the majority of their time. So I felt like there were these missed opportunities for just even wellness interventions to be happening. And my real dream was to be in a school. So perhaps I could provide some kind of support or intervention if students need it. So currently, I am what my official title is, crisis counselor on the child study team at Passaic County Vocational Schools, and I provide therapeutic interventions for students who fall under the special education umbrella, but am obviously also there for supports if needed be in in significant crisis situations and things like that for all students and even faculty in the community. So So I've been saying this, I guess, since the pandemic has happened. Obviously COVID and the focus on having us return back to a safe and healthy society is obviously at the forefront of what we all need and what we all want, and is super important. However, that doesn't mean that everything else goes away. So on top of the pandemic seems to have exacerbated all of these other issues. Families are still having family issues. Couples are still having marital issues. Kids are still having learning issues, financial issues, poverty, racism, sexism, identity issues, friendships, peers, relationships, breakups, all the typical things that children and teenagers go through developmentally, and things that people don't go through developmentally. I know, and I don't want to get tangential, but a big thing during this pandemic was grief. And grief looks like a lot of different things. Grief is just defined as a loss. So it doesn't have to be a death, it can be a loss. So loss of a job, loss of a marriage, loss of a family member due to COVID, not due to COVID. And speaking to a lot of students this year, a lot of students did lose family members to COVID, but a lot of students also lost family members to non-COVID issues. And a lot of our students would say, I feel so bad being upset because so-and-so just lost their mother to COVID, or so-and-so just lost their grandmother to COVID. And students felt like they actually weren't able or didn't give themselves permission to grieve because they didn't lose somebody to COVID, you know? So there's all these really convoluted, and it's really sticky and messy. And I think just getting back to why we're here and what we want to discuss in transitioning back to schools, we really have to be gentle. We really have to be kind. We really have to be patient, and we really need to follow our students' leads, because they've been going through so much, and so have we over the past 2 years.
Do you feel that what you just brought up about a student not feeling capable of grieving because someone else has it worse, do you feel like that is a larger issue in our society, especially with kids today? Do you feel like, have you seen that?
Oh, 100%.
Where people, I feel like that's a lot of the social media side, where they get to see how people, and like, how dare I, because the thing is always, oh, there's somebody who has less than you, think about them. And I don't like that phrase, because people will say that to me. I have 3 kids that go, well, I can't even complain about my 2 because you have 3, or I can't complain about my 1 because you have 3. And I say, no, you have every right to complain as much as you want. Your experience is your experience. I don't want you to feel that you can't complain about something because you think I have it worse. That's
exactly what I usually say. Your experience is your experience.
Right. So what do we do with that? How does that change? What are your recommendations for anybody, really?
Yeah.
I think validation is big, right? So being a school counselor and being with children or even faculty that come and seek us out because they want support or maybe a resource or something like that, it's important just to listen and validate them, and just to say, that sounds terrible. I can't imagine how you're feeling, but that sounds terrible. Or that you matter, or your feelings matter, or everything that you're saying is valid. And kids need to hear that. And a lot of times kids aren't hearing that. They're just hearing, well, so-and-so has it worse, and then then that's like the message that they hear and that they receive. So
and I also think it's like the constant comparison, right? We are always stuck in this constant state of comparison. You said it even with social media when we spoke about it a little bit before, but it's just identifying that things aren't going to look the same for everyone, right? And just accepting that, like, what's difficult for me may not be difficult for you, but it still doesn't mean that it's not my struggle and that it's not important. But again, for you, the question, how should even teachers in the classroom be approaching this with students? Because sometimes they're on the forefront of it, like Dave.
Yeah, I think it's so difficult because, right, so, and sometimes I get in trouble for saying this because, right, everything that I was taught in grad school, that you were taught in grad school, but you were taught to become an educator, right, all the things that we're taught, it's like, here's these signs or symptoms, and this is what depression looks like, and this is what anxiety looks like. And if you have a student that's doing this, and this, a red flag should go up that you know, that they may be suffering from anxiety, or they may have experienced a trauma. Yes, that is true, But the opposite is also true. What if all of a sudden you have somebody who's overachieving? What if somebody who kind of has like the typical balance of emotions, but then is just like so happy or so positive, right? So there's all of these things. My thing that I always say is your students, you always go with your gut. So if you feel like something is just not right, or something is not, or is off, is just to have that conversation with students. And I think a lot of times students don't want to be called out because they may feel very insecure with whatever is going on. They may be feeling that, well, I really don't have a right to be depressed because so and so is going through this. And but I think in a classroom, like the universal message, I think that's really important, that all kids are hearing the same message, right? If something is going on, know that you can come to me. If something is going on, please reach out to a friend. If something is going on, I know a lot of teachers this year did a lot of like surveys, like anonymous surveys in their classrooms, and we received a lot of referrals through the school counseling department, through the different crisis intervention teams, because teachers just went that little extra mile. And it was so important, because kids, right? If a teacher says to a student, well, we have counselors in the building, what do students usually say? I'm not talking to a counselor, right? That's usually what they say. And I get that. I've been in counseling myself. I get that. I'm not talking to anybody else. Yes, counselors go to counseling, right? Let's break that stigma right away. Counselors go to counseling. Therapists go to therapy. Right? I don't want to talk to anybody about what's going on, but I think why it's so important for teachers to have that open line of communications, because the kids are going to go to you first.
Right.
The kids are going to go to their coaches first. The kids are going to go to people who they feel safe with. And then you are like, I call it like the lifesaver in the boat, like literally like the lifeline that gets thrown out on the boat. Because it may be, and it's not to put more work on the teachers, but just maybe circling back to that conversation. Hey, I know you talked about, or you said something on that survey that you're having a hard time. Have you talked to anybody about it? Your parents, your friends? Oh, you can't talk to your parents or friends? Have you ever thought about talking to somebody? Oh, you don't want to talk to them. Okay, but just know that there's people who are here. And then maybe 3 days later, circle back. And then eventually it's going to happen where they're either going to agree with you, or at least comply that maybe I should talk to somebody else. So teachers really are on that front line. And I know that you're all doing so much already, but it's kind of just a part of it with what's especially going on now.
And I don't think it's an additional thing either. And again, like you said, you're building that trust. You're seeing them every day. And with that interaction, and if they are there with you and they are present with you, they're more likely to come to you and talk. And I know your kids, they love you, right?
Yeah, but I think is, for one of the benefits of this year, with the students coming in person, even with masks on, you can still see eyes. And eyes will tell you a bunch. And that's why I would have students last year, even though it was very few who would be in there in person. I could see if something was bothering them, and I could pull them aside and ask them if it's everything okay. And then it might take 3 or 4 times for me to say, listen, do you want to step out? Do you want to talk after class? And then eventually they would say, I'd give them maybe a quiet activity, and then they would walk over to the desk and say, listen, how do you deal with this issue? Something's going on, whatever. And then it opens up the door for the conversation. And then it was difficult because I want to give them a hug, and then it's 6 feet. I'm like,
But it all comes from trust, because how many students I've had, students referred to me specifically, and they've said, well, Mr. So-and-so said that you're a good person to talk to. And they trust Mr. So-and-so, or my coach said that I should talk to you.
I think that's huge.
And that's,
what you're saying. Because when I got to
huge.
know you through the passing of a teacher last year, I felt very comfortable being able to use your name when I felt a student was in need to go the next step. And that's why I feel like that's important too, for schools to be able to establish, a way to get that information out there, to say these are the people, and then, get to know them, things like that, to be able to establish those relationships so that they know, all right, these are the people who I'm going to go to.
And I appreciate that, and it's reciprocal, because then as myself as a counselor, as I got to know teachers, I mean, it's my 5th year at PCTVS, but I could say things like, if students were talking to me, I'm just using this as an example, like, I'm so stressed because of AB, talk to Mr. Ritchie. Like, I know he's going to hear you. You know what I mean? Or something's going on, but talk to Coach Put Up. one of my favorite people in the building, talk like, and it's just because, right, they trusted you, so now they're kind of like letting their guard
Right.
down with me, or they trust me and now they feel like maybe
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more empowered to talk to the other people that they need to talk to. And I don't really mean to make it sound like all doom and gloom. The thing is, though, kids are resilient. They're like the most resilient people that I've ever met. So right now I think we're in a really tough spot, and I think we're embarking on some really challenging times, but I'm also a big believer that it's going to be okay. And there are times where it's okay not to be okay, but at the end, what's the other option? Like, we're going to get through it. And I think if kids feel like they have a camaraderie in teachers and counselors and a coach, in anybody, in a principal, in a vice principal, in a security guard that we have in the hallway, they have their one identifiable adult.
Yeah.
You know, it makes such a difference.
And I do think that kind of goes into the whole idea of expectations from parents, from students, and from teachers. That with SEL, we need to integrate it into the curriculum as we see fit, and not overdo it, because students don't need every class to be hammering them with 30 minutes of reflective writing or something, but they do need, and I feel for myself as a teacher, maybe every couple of weeks, whatever it is, whatever I find a balance in, to say, all right, we're going to take that day to allow you guys to talk about a topic that's bothering you with the school, with anxiety about college, whatever it is, just to give them that time. They look forward to that. They start generating questions, and then they have a good conversation. It gets people involved. It gets them kind of socialize a bit. And I need to feel as a teacher, and schools need to understand this, that it shouldn't be stick to the curriculum, make sure you get X, Y, and Z done, unit 5, whatever it is, because, and parents as well. Well, what'd you do today? Oh, we talked about this stuff. Well, how come you didn't finish reading that book? It becomes, and then if grades are the same way and students are doing worse, the expectation during this time still has to be tamped down a bit, just to say, if the students aren't, crushing it academically, it doesn't mean they're not growing in multiple ways and getting past things that may be emotional issues or mental issues that they're getting past that are more important right now. So, as a parent, I look at my daughter's scores and I'm like, how come we only get a 3 or 4 on this or something, whatever the report card? And I'm like, I have to stop and be like, she just had a rough year wearing masks, going in every other day, only for half days. And if she can't do all of these things, it's okay. She'll get it.
Yeah.
And then for teachers, do the same.
The scary part is that you're saying that, and you can look back and you can say it now, like, okay, I need to step it back. But how many parents aren't really looking at it that way? And I think about how many parents, even in returning to work last year after having the baby, like, they're like, well, my kid usually gets an A in these classes. Why don't they have an A now? And it's like, well, you have to understand that it's not just about the grade. Are they feeling healthy? Is their well-being? Is that a part of your assessment with them coming home every day? Do you see a difference in them? And are they happy to go to school? Are they happy to be there and present within their community? And I think that it's going to be hard to get parents to turn that off. Like, if you look at Power School, I can actually see how often parents look at Power School. Like, it shows you how many times they log in. I'm like, this kid hasn't looked at it once. That parent looked at it 50 times today.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, then what is the feedback that child is getting from that parent based on the grades that they're receiving? And are they taking into account everything else that's going on in life?
So I'm fully aware of everything that's going on. I know that everyone is watching me, obviously doing something, playing Tetris or what have you. But I literally know that the audio is out of sync with the video. And I'm finding the setting. It's doable. It's going to be better, I'm sure, just listening to it on the audio. A very quick commercial break. We are available on 5 different podcasting platforms right now. So I have the links up here. I will get them so that it's accessible for everyone. We're on YouTube, Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, and Spotify right now. So Apple Podcasts, Overcast, and what have you coming. But so right now, please excuse me while I duck out of the conversation just a little bit and do all techie stuff. I could end the podcast and start again, but you know what? Let's just keep on marching on, I say. So we'll get it
on.
sorted. It's because I added a brand new audio source, and I forgot, my bad, to adjust the timing to match up with the video. So I'm fired.
Is that something that could be adjusted on the fly? Or
That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to see, does that look better? Does that look better? But I can't remember for the life of me, so I'm searching. Anyway, enough of that. Back to the conversation.
So yeah, expectations. I know when I teach honors level students, everybody wants their child to be an honors level student, and I feel that sometimes it could be, like you said, the child could come there and say, my child has always had A's in English, and I'm expecting to have an A again. And I'm like, well, I teach a little bit harder, and I want them to learn more. And the issue with the pandemic was some people were giving A's because they felt the sense of empathy, just to say, all right, as long as you do the work, you're going to get an A. And they really weren't A students. And then they go to another teacher. Like, if I have those kids this year, they might not get an A. And it doesn't mean they're not learning. I have to drill in to the students first about learning and the education first,
As opposed
and not
to the
the grade. Yeah, and then they have to try to turn that into and I tell the parents, if they show up for back to school night or whatever, I always say, do not focus on the grade, focus on the learning, because the grade will come, and by the end of the year the kids are like, I never had honors before. I got a C+ in this class, and I learned more this year than I've ever learned before. And I said, I'm proud of you for that grade. Like, don't think of that as a negative thing. And they're like, no, I don't. This is good. Like, it takes a while to get them to not look at just the grade as the be-all, end-all. And I think that's part of this whole anxiety of, how am I going to be able to maintain my parents' expectations while going back to school under these circumstances? I haven't seen my peers in, a year and a half. I have to wear a mask. I have to navigate things. If you're a freshman, if you're a sophomore, you've never been in the building before. There's so many different things that a grade at the end of the day should not be what the focus is during this time.
And I not to digress, but I wonder where that even comes from. Like, I know that a lot of it starts at home. I have a 7-year-old, 7 going on 17 sometimes, I feel like. But it was interesting this year, and so she was in first grade last year, so she's a rising second grader, and the grades would come in, and at that level, right, what do you get? Like S for satisfactory,
E
for X, right? And my daughter would say, did I get an A? Did I get 100? No, I know she's not hearing that from me, because that's not even my language, And I'd say, what do you, I said, they don't even give that grade. What do you mean, did you get an A? Did you get 100? And if let's say she got one wrong on a test, she would say, what do you mean I didn't get them all right? I said, but you're learning. You're not actually supposed to get them all right. And she's like, well, what do you mean? Well, have you ever learned this before? No. Well, you're learning that you're not supposed to get them all right. You're supposed to get some wrong, and then you learn, right? So I actually had to work on that a lot with my then 6-year-old turning 7-year-old this year. And I think back, and I use that experience, and I think about it with my high school level kids. And I have a lot of kids that continue to feel this pressure. And a lot of kids this year felt school as their escape. And if it was the family decision for them to come back full time for 5 days a week or hybrid, they were yearning for that, because they felt like pre-COVID they already had the academic pressure. But then when they were at home, it was knocks on the door every 3 seconds, right? Are you logged on? Are you listening? Are you paying attention? They assign homework. Sometimes parents were on the WebExes in the background. Yeah. So it was like, oh my gosh, like, let's just make sure people are safe, people are well, people are communicating, your kids are still being social somehow, some way. I think you said the management of the expectation is so big, and you just saying that you being able to have those experiences as an educator, where maybe a kid was typically an A student, but maybe they were a C+ student in your class, but they just felt so much more grateful and so much more empowered, and even maybe so much more smarter or intelligent because you push them and learn them. Like, the grade doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
Mr. Putup, with him teaching engineering, he likes to like make things, and his kids are like, this guy, what's wrong with him, right? So the other day he was talking about something, and he was like, oh no, I tell my kids, you're gonna screw it up. you're going to screw up. But we're eventually going to figure out how to make it work, right? And I think that that's something that's really important. And like you're saying that, like, yeah, you may mess it up. You may not get it always right the first time, but eventually you're going to learn. And it's a part of just the process and accepting that. That's part of SEL, right? That you have to have this growth and you have to have this regulation and you need to be able to do it for yourself. And if you don't do it, not breaking down as a result, but being able to build yourself back up so that you can move on and you can get better at it.
Sure.
Yeah, the process is what needs to be the focus and not the end result. And I feel that the parents often, not all, but many just focus on the result. They just look at the grade and they try to say, well, you must have done everything brilliantly. In 100, what does that mean? You're perfect. Does anybody really think their child is perfect in every class? And yet what happens is, what I find is that the students who are dealing with many things and have a lot of expectations at home as well of watching their younger siblings and all these different things, they still have the expectation of the high grade. They know they get it, and then they wind up cutting corners, which then leads them to cut more corners in the future. And then, if you cheat in Spanish 1, how are you going to do in Spanish 2? Right. And so on. So the problem becomes, a lot of students who could use technology last year to submit everything, which is pretty much everybody, if they have to handwrite something, if they have to try to figure out a math problem on their own without a calculator, it becomes like, how are they going to manage these things? And the expectations, again, have to be lowered to say, we have to go back to a point where you're understanding the material and you can do these things on your own. Because, and I don't know where education's moving as far as, are they eventually just going to get rid of things that you'd have to memorize, things like that, because you're just going to, as long as you could find it on the computer, you're okay. But I dread that. I hate that. I want the students to know it, where I could ask them a question and they could answer, not, oh, I could look that up, because anybody could look that up. What's the symbol in the book? Oh, hold on a second, I can get that. Like, how is that anything? But that's what their go-to move is, and that's where we're going to have more problems down the road, because if they somehow get to college with that academic, background of A's and B's, but they didn't do it honorably, then how are they going to do in college when they don't have the support system and no one's really teaching them and the parents aren't there, and then it becomes even more of a stressful environment.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was just, I think to some of my students this year, like I said, that fall under the special education umbrella. So there's different learning styles, there's different learning challenges. There's certain needs and supports that need to be in place, and it was really hard for them this year. I mean, it was really, really difficult. Some students who still maybe have difficulty navigating Canvas, right? And then we're fully remote, and they can't navigate Canvas on their own because there's either 2 teachers in the classroom or a teacher and an aide. So there is that level of support, which is the appropriate level of support because that's the need of the child, right? But I feel there was so much lost in our special education teachers at PCTBS. I mean, they went above and beyond, and they were doing, which I'm sure all the teachers did. I'm just saying, I saw, just because that's the wheelhouse that I'm in, making tutorial videos and trying to, doing all these extra things because they recognized what was lacking by kids not being in the classroom. And it was really, really difficult. So, my heart, breaks even more for those kids, because I feel like so much was lost over those 2 years, just even skill sets, not only just the education component and the learning, but just the skill sets that they would get and the support that they would get within the classroom was lost. But I know the teachers that we have at Tech, and I know that they're going to do everything that they can to supplement all of that this year. But again, that goes back then to incorporating the SEL into the classroom, having the brain breaks, having the let learning be fun. It's really interesting where I do a lot of group work. And yes, I do a lot of mindful activities, mental health awareness, wellness, all of these, by the book activities, right? The most successful activity that I ever ran this year, where I was like, does everybody just want to stop thinking for a minute and play charades? And they're like, let's play charades, you know. And there was so much power in that, you know. We weren't talking about the pandemic, we weren't talking about technology, we weren't talking about study skills, we weren't talking about trauma, we weren't talking about resiliency, we weren't talking about any of the things that I'm supposed to be talking about with the kids. And I'm like, who just needs a break? What do you want to play, charades or Pictionary? You pick one. And it was the energy, the shift. There was just a shift.
Right.
And it was so, that's the magic that I say that happens in the room sometimes. There was such a shift in just the kids for that day. And some of the kids were playing Pictionary and charades from at home through WebEx, but even that, it was just so different. One time when we were fully virtual, I had them do a scavenger hunt in their house. They're like, what are we going to talk about today? Are we going to talk about coping skills, Miss Saraceno? Whatever. I know, and they were kind of like all coping skills out. And I'm like, you want to play scavenger hunt? They're like, scavenger hunt. So I literally ran a virtual scavenger hunt. It was it was great. It was fun. The kids were laughing. And we also got to let them showcase things about themselves. Like, get me your favorite cup that you like to drink out of. And like all of a sudden they like ran and like there was nobody on the screen, and then they came back, and who was holding up a mug that they got in Montreal, or who was holding up a glass that their aunt brought them from Spain, or, you know, it was just a really cool opportunity. The best was when I was like, pull up your least favorite baby picture, and they all ran and they pulled like a baby picture that they had that, you know, their family member had displayed in the house. Stuff like that, right? It's just different. It shifts. And even us talking about it, the energy shifts, because like how lighthearted and how fun is that? And sometimes kids just need that too.
And I think that the thing is, like, going back to now thinking about the classroom and thinking about teachers and thinking about how you can incorporate some of these activities that are SEL like in your classroom. It's like some teachers may be afraid to do it because they're like, I do need to have this curriculum.
Right.
I need to finish this. I need to get all these things checked off. But I think that teachers have to see that it's going to benefit them and it'll benefit the students in the end. And we're not asking to do like an extra thing. It's just make it a part of what you're already doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I feel even something like that, to go more specific into kind of tying it back to the original idea of how to address parents, teachers, and students as we get back to school, I think that idea would be perfect for parents to do in the house, like every Friday night or something, just to have something where it's like, I'm not going to ask you about school right now. Let's just spend from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. We're going to do a game as a family. We're going to do something that's fun, lighthearted. It's not going to be with any kind of high level of expectation. It's just going to be some kind of fun, energetic thing that we can do.
Cook together.
Right. Just
have
something that is
for
that
dinner,
break.
right?
Because we do get caught up, I think, you know, myself included, in these routines that, you know, when kids come home, how was school today? What'd you do? Let me see your work. And it becomes like business like. It's not like fun. They're coming back saying, oh, I did this today. Look what I colored. And it's like, are we looking for the flaws as opposed to, well, that's beautiful. It's like, you're outside the line. What's the matter with you? And again, I think that's where the expectation, we have to allow education to be fun while navigating this as well. So I think, you know, a message to parents would be, you know, don't have such a high academic standard for a little bit. Make sure that you keep an eye on the wellness of your child, no matter the age. You know, make sure that you're not asking them what'd you learn today, but what'd you do, how'd you feel about, you know, different types of questions and the standard types of questions. And then same thing for teachers, you know, to scale back a little bit on curriculum driven everything, and to have a day where even allow the students to dictate what you do for that day. I mean, it could be a half day, or it could be a Friday before a long weekend or something, but you kind of give it to them and say, look, next Friday I'm going to give you a chance to talk about something. A lot of times my students as juniors in high school, they often say, tell us about college, tell us some stories about college. And then when I tell stories about college or something like that, they want to go to college so bad. They get so excited about it, and they want to start looking everything up, and they want to start going to the guidance counselors. Oh, what school am I going to go to? Because all they think of about college is just this albatross of stress, and how am I going to pay for it, and what's it going to be like, and oh my God, and the work, and then the job, and how am I going to pay for it? It's so many things that you just. When I didn't care about any of that. I was just like, I want to go away. I want to be on my own. It's different, you know, but you do want to allow them to be excited for the future, because there's been so much negativity over the last few years, whether it's been political negativity, and then it's the pandemic, and then you know, all the stresses that are out there. and as you mentioned before about identity issues and social issues and all the different things that are going on, we have to allow them to have some fun and laugh and be social. And especially early on in the year, I think it's a great way to kind of break down some of those barriers that they've probably made over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Even in the household too.
You know, one of my kids, last year when I came back, and I didn't have my kids back, but he was coming to see me anyway just to like check in, and he said, you know what my parents started doing? We started doing a game night. I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. He was like, a game night and dinner, and he was really excited about it, right? So it was like they would stay and they would do like Monopoly or something like that, and then they would go ahead and they would head out to dinner. And he said, it's the most that we've talked ever. You know, so just thinking as like families are out there and they're trying to figure out what to do or navigate. It doesn't even have to be going out to dinner or save your money. Like, just do something and play a game, play charades at home, and just, you know, open it up, and the conversations will come. You don't have to force the conversations; they'll come.
It's true.
Yeah, again, ignore me. I'm just here. I'm just to look pretty tonight. So
eye candy.
Yeah, as my wife would say, ha. Inside joke. Yeah, look, I think it's today has been really, really weird from the time of this is like a commercial break again, isn't it? So a couple of hours ago I started having technical issues, and I've been bouncing around so I do apologize with the audio not being in sync with the video. That will get sorted. I know what the issue is. You don't need to know the whys and wherefores, but that's something for me to figure out. I might have to use a different computer next time. But yeah, it's pretty crazy the number of parents that I see put the same amount of pressure on their children as though it was just a regular school year, and they're still expecting those A's and those, 100% and what have you, and just an absolute unreasonable amount of expectation from the parents for what their children should be producing. And this is like the last time this happened was 100 years ago, the Spanish flu. Actually my wife's aunt passed away of the Spanish flu last time. So yeah, it's we've, when we were saying the other week that when we grow up, we never had the social media attention. We never had all of the things that draw and drain from us. I'm going to put it on me. But we it's weird when you're doing this and you put it on yourself because I'm talking. It is weird to be. That's my comfort zone right there. Four of us, but yeah, it's not reasonable to expect the same everyday expectations that you used to get out of your child a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure that many are even voicing what's truly going on. And that's one of the real big issues in class, is chipping away. A massive topic is we have students in our class that have different needs, and I'm trained in life to teach graphic design, 3D animation, digital media, not that you know it tonight. And but the thing is, I'm not trained as a counselor, which I feel we need some pretty heavy one-on-one training to get, some triage stuff. They come to us sometimes, often, and it's a sad situation at times when I'm the first one that has to make a phone call that I don't want to make because something's been told to me. Right. And by law, I'm not really meant to tell anyone else. Just pick up the phone, make the phone call, protect the child. Oftentimes then the student, the child, hates you or will never talk to you again. And that's happened to me like 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. And it's always a pain.
Right.
You know, thankfully I have other teachers in my corner and guidance counselors and what have you. So they're like, Mr. Jones has your best intentions. You know, we've all sworn that if anything is untoward or it seems like it should be reported, that we do so. But add on top of all that everyday normal stuff, the hardships of the COVID, the masks on our face, the interaction. There was a report I saw today on YouTube, and then I reversed engineered it and I went to CNN to actually look at it, but I didn't read it yet. And the headlines were something like, are wearing masks a negative thing for the student, for the child? And the gist of the article, hearsay through the people that were talking about it, was there's no proof that it has any negative connotations or any negative, you know, long lasting this, that and the others, when we know it absolutely has so much negative. It's like a gag, you know. We're not able to use our grow up and get that emotional intelligence by seeing by the look on someone else's face that we've upset them or that we've just really angered them, you know, which is why text these days is so dangerous, right? Yeah. Because we don't know all of the emotions behind it. So yeah, the kids are dealing with so much, and in class I do like to acknowledge that and just say, look, you know I'm your teacher, I know I'm not a guidance counselor, but I'm here. If you need to talk, if you need to chat, if you need to express something, I'm here, you know. But the sad thing is, sometimes when something gets written or if it gets said, and if it has the wrong, you know, it has to be kind of we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And there are those teachers that don't want to ruffle the feathers. They don't want to unsettle the they don't want to unsettle the dirt or the dust. Oh, because we might find something out. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Now we know we can help protect that child, maybe. You know.
But you're right. There are a lot of people who will just say, I'm not assigning that because I know I might get something that I have to report, or it lends itself to that, and then it becomes an issue, especially for English teachers and for certain subject matter where you're like, write a poem, write about this. And if you don't give them a topic and you say, write about what's important to you, and they write about something, and then you're like, well, what does this mean? How might I have to look into this? And then it becomes kind of like that vague, use the metaphor there, but I don't know if it's about you, if it's, you know, then it becomes kind of like...
I do have to say, though, and again, I'm kind of like the rookie here in regards to working in schools, because I'm only 5 years in, but being the role of, you know, working in crisis and crisis intervention, I can honestly say in 5 years, there's only been one time where a parent was angry that I actually was calling them, or that the school was calling them. And I've made, you know, a bunch of phone calls, whether it was with supervisors or other school counselors or administration or SROs or just with the child present. You know, I can really only think of one time where a parent, now listen, there may have been times where I've called and a parent was maybe upset, but the end of the conversation was, I understand that you're doing your job. I understand you're looking at the best interest of my child. There was only one time where a parent was very, very abrasive and angry and thought we overstepped, and, you know, all of those pieces. You know, and I always kind of, and listen, even as a counselor, and Alina can say that, and Alina can say this too, even though this is what we're trained to do, it doesn't get any easier for us each time we have to ask a child if they're thinking about hurting themselves, or if they're thinking about suicide, or have they attempted, like, that does not get easier. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing that as a profession. Each time I have to ask that question, I hope I'm not projecting that to the student, but internally, you know, I kind of like hold my breath and then have to ask the question. It doesn't get easier. what I've said to colleagues and staff are the same things what I've said to students in my office when students have said, I want to tell you something and it's about my friend, but I know that they're going to be angry and I know it's going to cause this and I know you're going to have to call home and I don't want to make a big deal out of it. And I've just looked at a student and said, would you rather have a dead friend or would you rather have an angry friend? And that kind of changes it. And they're like, well, you know, if they're really in that kind of trouble, I'd rather them never talk to me again and be mad as long as they're alive and okay. And I'm like, well, then there's your answer, you know? And I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot on teachers, but wouldn't we rather pull this stuff up and offer an opportunity for the support or for the intervention to happen? Because if we don't try, then we never know what could happen.
And it's almost like even talking about the poems or giving them the freedom to write about things that they want. When's the last time that they were given the opportunity to write about something that was important to them that they really wanted to write about?
And it may not lead into like a crisis intervention. It could be like, this is something that happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago and they have been in treatment or the family doesn't know about it and they have kind of overcome, for lack of a better word, the situation. But the writing is cathartic, the assignment is cathartic. It gave them some power over what was going on. So, you know, just because kids write about things or say things, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's, you know, doom and gloom and now we have to do this big intervention. It can just be a conversation to see where they're at.
And a lot of times it is just to start the conversation.
Correct. Yeah.
But what I have experienced with that, especially from a poetic standpoint, is I would say 80% of the poems that come in out of, like, let's say it's 120 kids, are dark.
Oh yeah.
Like, not like have to be like over top, but they're mostly very negative about things. And that just kind of tells you they're not really expressing those emotions all that much. They might be bottling them up. Again, keep going back to the social media, they don't talk about serious issues all that much, that, you know, especially when it's personal. They just put out their best self. Here's a picture of me smiling, whatever it is, because it's not really a very close-knit type of thing where they feel like that kind of safety and you know,
well,
trust.
that's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say that I want to shine the light back on you for a second, but like, think about that then. Though 80% of those really dark poems, those kids felt safe enough with you. You may have been the first person they ever felt safe with, that they expressed that. And I know sometimes that's hard to hear or hard to accept, but that's the reality. You may be the first one that they felt safe enough, like,
I'm going to put it out there.
I'm going to put it out there.
Well, the best part is I never make them read it. I always say I'll encourage you to, but I'll never make you do it. And they'll be like, and then someone will be like, I'll read theirs. I'm like, no, you're not reading theirs. Like, if they want to read it, they could read it, but you're not reading somebody else's. Like, I want someone else. Like, no, you have to read it. And that's really a cathartic thing for them too, just to kind of like, because then once one student reads theirs, another student raises their hand, and then it really empowers everybody else to be like, I want to go. And then they'll be like, can we do this tomorrow too? And it becomes one of those things where it might take a while for the first one to go, but then they all want to share it. It feels, you know, they love the affirmation they're getting from everybody else about it. That was really good. You know, they feel much better about themselves after being able to share it as well. And I think that's something that, you know, again, it's not giving them a topic. It could even be giving them a topic, but just allowing them the chance to express themselves in some way, I think, has not really been on the forefront of things as much.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Sorry guys, I'm tapping away here like trying to get all the timing right. No, look, I mean, and I think this year is going to be even tougher. There's a lot yet to reveal itself this year ahead, and for a lot of them it's going to be, I mean, some of them haven't even set foot in school yet, have they? So this is going to be their first year as sophomores, I guess. So it's going to be interesting. Did we see, was it the tail end of 2 years ago? When did all of this start? See, that's how long it was.
That's how time.
March
So
2019?
March of
29.
Yeah, so the juniors this year have only been in school.
March of 20.
20, yeah.
Oh, 20.
20, because we had a graduating class of
Yes.
2019.
It's only midway
so-
through. We only made it to like March 13th or something like
it's,
that.
right.
it's all a blur to me.
It is a blur.
And you know what? There's a lot of things coming that I'm kind of I need to start meditating for, because I need to handle this stress. But it's all good. But I know this year coming is going to be like a year unlike we've had so far. You know, we're going to be using a lot of band-aids, SEL like never before. A lot of teachers are not going to want to do any of that stuff. They're just going to want to teach their subject, and that's it, because obviously they feel that it's not their job. And I feel that the role of educator is changing, and SEL needs to be baked into what we do, what subject we teach, be it academic or shop class, so that, you know, there's a little smattering everywhere. So it doesn't need to be a special project. Just keeping your eyes, your ears open, just seeing, having being socially aware yourself, being emotionally adept to take note of some of the triggers that are going on, to just start using those teachers logs, you know.
But think about it too, even to put COVID over here for a second, just think about kids developmentally, right? Think about the developmental spectrum. You're going to have juniors in the building that have not stepped foot on campus since halfway through their freshman year.
Yeah.
So put COVID aside for a second. Think about typical childhood development. Think about yourself, the changes that occurred from age 14 to age 17. If you really, I'm just saying, right? Because you kind of have that spectrum of where kids enter as freshmen and where they are at juniors. Think just about that. You're going to have kids who have not been stepped foot onto this campus, and they were just getting through their typical freshman anxieties and are the appropriate freshman anxieties. And right, our school is like nowhere else because it is the size of a small college campus, and there's buildings and there's departments and there's all of these things. And they were just kind of like, you know, getting into the groove, right? Everything was kind of being massaged, and they were trying to, you know, the kids that were feeling not so confident were starting to feel confident, and it's March, and they're more than halfway through the year, and now they've made their friends, and then this one's their favorite teacher, and, you know, all these things, and then it was just ripped away.
But it was also coming out of the winter as well.
Yes.
So their first time, like, where they could actually be out and kind of share some of those friendships and be out, because wintertime, you know, we're not really going anywhere. You're kind of batting up the hatches for those 3 months, 4 months, and then you're hopeful that spring you're able to kind of express it. So now they've been kind of waiting for that moment to be like, let's go out, let's go for a walk, and now that's just taken away too. And then for the last couple of years, it's been the same thing. And I agree with you. It's you take the normal, you know, issues, and you have to add that with the pandemic. But I do feel like, I think it's important that with the new school year, with the masks, with the students being in person, we all have to understand, and this is where SEL gets like a bad rep on this, is because too many people look at it as like a kumbaya type of thing. It's not. That's one extreme way of looking at it, where it's like, I don't want my kid in class every day just talking about feelings. That's not what we're talking about. We're saying, just listen to people and let them express themselves in some way, shape, or form, and just listen to them and get to know them on a deeper level, as a parent, as a teacher, as a human being, and kind of getting back to that, instead of making it so robotic and so business-like that every interaction with people has to be a business relationship. We need to get more personal, but that's all that is. So we need to kind of get away from that, because I know some people will say, I don't like SEL because I don't want my kids just talking about their feelings all day. That's not what it is. Yeah. So people need to get that out of their mind, first of all. Yeah. But also at the same time, for parents that are, let's say, against masks, they might be unknowingly creating such fear in their child right now, as a kindergartner going into school, as a fourth grader, as a middle school student going to the school for the first time, as a high school student, that they're going to want to go in and say hello to their friends, and they're going to sit and be so awkward to say, am I allowed to fist bump you? Can I give you a hug? Can I what am I going to do here? And again, this is something where, as a high school student, I'm hugging everybody in sight. That girl's good looking. Hey, whatever it is. But you have to. That's something that is so ingrained in teenage lifestyle, that if you're sitting there saying, I don't want you to go, and I'm so afraid of this thing and everything. You better be careful. How are they going to learn anything in that environment if they're sitting there constantly shaking every time someone sneezes or coughs in the class, or they get too close to somebody, or they run out of hand sanitizer?
Yeah.
It's going to be. We don't want there to be just straight panic in the classroom, and it shouldn't be. We want them to be comfortable. We want them to learn. We want them to try to make the setting as normal as possible in these abnormal circumstances. But we can't just make it into like a hysteria.
Right.
I feel like that's the problem.
Yeah, two points. This is one of, for me, because I know everyone's been affected by COVID differently, and thankfully, knock on wood, I didn't lose anyone close, right? Close in my circle to COVID. I had someone that I know very, very well, that was on a ventilator, and like that was frightening. One of the saddest things for me, and again, just my experience, right? So I can't, going back to almost an hour ago, saying like we can't minimize each other's experiences, but one of the saddest experiences for me was when my daughter, when the pandemic hit, she was kindergarten. She's my only child currently, and you know, for me as her mom, not being able to like see her like little moving up ceremony, and she wasn't getting. So at the end of the year in June, some of the families just within kind of like our couple block radius, we organized like a little graduation parade. So then we all kind of met at my house afterwards, and the kids, who some haven't seen each other. Now here's a bunch of little 5-year-olds. I mean, I get choked up thinking about they ran to each other. It was like, Sally, Maya, and they like ran, and then they stopped. And like to watch that, like the kid, like it was so heartbreaking to see these little 5-year-olds like run up to each other and then stop. Because what do you say, right? High school, right? Like you're hugging, you're, you know, what did the kids say? Dabbing each other up, right? Like that, right? Like this is just part of it. And then the other piece of what I want to kind of like now circle back to is that we have students actively in our high school and high schools across the country that are school avoidant for a variety of reasons. And school avoidance is based from anxiety, again, for a variety of different reasons. I am so fearful, or I feel for those kids who are already school avoidant, and this pandemic has brought on another level of school avoidance because they're fearful for their own safety. I have students who have lost parents to COVID, grandparents to COVID, siblings to COVID. I mean, that's the actual reality. And some kids are fearful still. Delta variant vaccines, no vaccines, masks, no masks. There are some kids who are legitimately fearful. And obviously that fear is validated because the truth is we are in a pandemic, and people have gotten sick, and people have. So what do we do, right, to kind of like minimize that? So I know for some of my students that were school avoidant, we had offered to just walk them through the campus, right, before school started, just get them more acclimated to the building. I had a student this year who had to come in for specific testing, so I organized it with the parent that I was meeting that student in the parking lot, and even though we were at 20% capacity at that point, I timed it where it wasn't a bell change. So unless it was like other faculty or a student going to the bathroom or something, there would be nobody else in the hallway, so that student felt comfortable, just to decrease their anxiety. But their anxiety was real, you know? So I think, like you said, again, circling back, managing the expectations of teachers, especially parents, moving back to this more of like a wellness rather than like the academics. Like we're going to have to ride this wave for a while. Like 2022 is going to come and it's not going to be over. 2023 is going to come, it's not going to be over. I'm saying the residual effects.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to build back up our kids for some time.
Yeah. Look, it's been an hour.
I want to say one more thing.
Yeah, please do.
I don't care if it's been. Just going off of that, I think that something that needs to be on people's minds right now, parents and teachers, is to start shifting the negative feeling about school coming back to being more excited. Like, you should be excited. You're going back to school. You're going to see your friends. Talk about the positive thing. I'm super excited to be going back. Like I know I'm going to have a bunch of new students who I haven't seen, and I don't know them, but I'm excited about starting the year. I'm excited that they're going to be in person. I don't care if they're wearing masks or not. Like they're all going to be wearing masks. That's fine. I don't care. I'll figure it out. But I want to get started. I want to get back to that routine. I want to, I'm excited that my daughter's going back. I want. You have to allow for some positivity, some optimism to shine through here, and not just make it, because teachers can have this problem as well. They can go in and say, "Oh, I really don't want to be here," and if you set that tone early on, you're done. Then the kids are just going to be, "Oh my God, he's right. This is terrible. We shouldn't be here." And just be excited. Have a smile on your face. Talk to the kids as people. How was your summer? Like just
You won't be able to see the brightest smile that I have.
But that's
you can see my eyes.
But that's the thing. They'll see my eyes too. But I always have a bit, like that's my problem. I smile past everybody in the hallway. They're not going to be able to see it. But we have to at least have some jokes, have some fun. Don't make it into why do we have to be here, or when are we going to be able to teach from home, and I have kids at home and I got to go take care of them and I'd rather be there. Like we can't have that attitude.
Look, I mean, it's a big chunk of it is to do with us in school, how we are in front, how we model in front of the students and each other. It's one of the reasons one of the biggest things I was told when I first started teaching was, and it doesn't matter if it's right or if it's wrong, but I think there's some truth in it just because you're hanging out with others. But sometimes, the break rooms for the teachers, sometimes, like minds kind of gather. I don't know. Sometimes I've gone in there and I've seen plenty of positive stuff. I've gone in and I've also seen plenty of negative stuff. So I keep to myself. But I think as far as the group that I hang with, we're all full of, for the most part, it's full of positivity. And we're very like-minded and we support each other. We're able to talk. We are each other's own support group. So I hang with a guy called Fernando, Gino, Luke, and some of the others. You know who you are, you special people, you. But look, I mean,
but that's what we're here for, though, too.
Yeah,
right. So I mean, if you don't have that group at your school, or if you feel that if you're a parent and you don't have that at your job, we'll be here Thursdays. Like we're all passionate people towards education and optimistic people. So look, I mean, you'll always share ideas with us.
We'll get the technical. I'll get the technical issues sorted out. The onus also lies on you. So if you're dealing with a student, a child, if you're teaching, it's just as much up to you. You can make their lives a living hell. You can make it something to look forward to. Can I always be someone's rock? Can I always be the reason someone can't wait to get in school? No. I'm human like everyone else, but for the most part, I think I think we know so many that do such a great job in school at setting the right emotions, the right attitude, and the right atmosphere. But also at home, if you're a parent, this is something that you can do. Instead of instilling fear, pain, anger, upset, distress, just like I was going to say just like an animal, but my brother's one of the leading dog behaviorists in the UK, and he often leads with that. But children are just the same. If I'm all anxious, so are my kids going to be all anxious. If I'm freaking out about wearing the mask, the kids are you're gonna pass that on. So we need to be more mindful and thoughtful about our words and our actions. We haven't really talked about still what mellow is. There's something very big behind all of this, and you're going to be hearing about it in a lot of detail next podcast.
Sure.
Yeah, next podcast.
Let's do it.
We're going to introduce to you who we are. We're going to have Jamie back again.
I love that. Thank you
Because
for having me tonight.
no, look, your students, you know, as well as Alima's and Dave's and my own too, dare I say it, but they're going to get a great kick out of all of this. So yeah, it's exciting, and there's things going on all the time that we, you know, oh, by the way, I spoke to so and so, they're passing it on to so and so, so things are always evolving. It's all a bit cryptic right now, so all I can tell you is to hang in there. Something very exciting is actually there, you just don't know about it. So no, that's very non-SEL, isn't it? None of that. Anyway, so knowing my luck, that's going to be some like hidden meaning for something else to do with like,
no.
you know. I know.
Cut.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Thank you so much, and we will see you next Thursday with all the technical issues sorted out.